Welcome back for another episode of Strive for 25. Joel Farrell here, and looking forward to sharing with you our guest today. Welcome back to another episode of the Strive for 25 podcast. And Joel Farrell here, and I've got a really special guest today, Alyssa Cleland, and she's going to fit into a couple of our equations. She's going to be fitting into the savings equation. Again, income minus your expenses equals your savings. So she's generating income in a very unique way. And we're going to stick with that for right now. But Alyssa, please introduce yourself. She's an entrepreneur in Texas.
The greatest country ever.
Right?
Yes, so I'm in Texas. I'm in the Dallas area. Like you said, my name's Alyssa. I'm 25 years old, and I do social media, so like TikTok and Instagram. Eventually I'll break into YouTube once I have time. And that is one of the ways that I make money.
Okay. So, and where can they find you?
Where can they find me? That's a great question. All my handles are Alyssa the amputee, because I am also missing a leg, but that's not important right now.
So Alyssa the amputee.
Yes.
Okay. So they can find you on Instagram, TikTok, onto those handles, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, cool. So at the end of the day, there's a pretty big gap between, people that are doing well on social media that are trying to generate income, create content, versus the people that are aspiring, right? I mean, there's either you're doing it or not. And there's probably some people in between, but do you want to kind of explain your journey and how you got into starting your channel and starting to create content and all that stuff?
Yeah, so I originally started with Instagram about 4 years ago, maybe even five. And it started because I started riding horses. Like I've ridden all my life, but I was starting to do para dressage, and that's the Paralympic side of dressage. And so I just wanted to document my journey, and I guess see how far I got. And so I just kind of started sharing every day about the horses I was riding and my training, and then also being an amputee, sharing how I was making horseback riding work for me as someone with a disability. And so I will say I did get some brand deals, if you would call them, through the horse stuff, through a lot of horse companies, got some sponsorships. So that was great. I boycotted one company, and that was like the biggest boom. That was like the first big boom my Instagram saw. And so yeah, so then it was pretty much just that for about 2 to 3 years. And then I started sprinkling in some like of my life stuff, some more personal stuff. And then as it grew and grew, I started, kind of halvesing it. So half personal, half horses, because I didn't stop riding. And then I think a little over a year ago, I ended up breaking my arm due to a horse riding accident. And so I obviously had to heal. So I just took a break. And I think, a few months prior to that is when TikTok started happening. And I've actually had two TikTok accounts. One I got to 1.1 million, and then I got banned. So that really sucked. So then my second one was the one I had at this point, and it's now 1.5 million. And so, I just kind of shared I guess like the healing process and like what I was feeling and blah, blah, blah. And then once my arm healed, I did get back, in the saddle, but I just had a lot of anxiety about it. And so I kind of stopped posting about it and kind of just switched to all personal. And so, uh, and then in January, I decided to end riding completely for the time being, just because it wasn't something that I was loving anymore. So now I've switched completely just to kind of like lifestyle and like sharing about what it's like being someone with a disability and things like that. And so I get brand deals for like lifestyle companies, a lot of clothing brands, things like that. And so yeah, it's interesting to share my life and then to also get paid to do it kind of, so I feel like younger me could definitely see myself doing this, but also like doing it still feels so like weird, And I'm not even doing it at the level that, some influencers are, which I would love to get there. But baby steps right now, and I just don't think I have the right team behind me and things like that. So I know eventually, hopefully, maybe I'll get there. And even if I don't, like, as long as it just pays the bills, like, I'm good.
As long as it pays the bills. Okay. Okay. There's a lot to dig in there. I mean, first off, for listeners out there that don't know what dressage is, because until not that long ago, I didn't know what that really was. Can you explain what that means or what that is?
Yeah, so dressage is like that fancy dancing that you see. So you have like it's not jumping. Everyone always asks if it's jumping, and I'm like, no, that's jumping. Dressage is you're in a ring and you have all these letters on the outside of the ring, and at like each letter you have to make the horse do something different. And so it's really I think like if you look at the definition, it is really like horse dancing, because like you have to be so in tune with your horse to get it to do all these different movements. And the higher up the levels you go, the harder the movements become. And so it's I enjoyed it better than I think jumping, just because all 4 feet stay on the ground most of the time. I think I would have loved jumping or cross country, but I think it's a little too much for me at this point. But dressage is just it's meant to look beautiful, and you're supposed to look effortless while you do it, even though like you're dying on the inside.
Right. So, is this something that people can see on major media? Is it Olympics? Is it
Yeah, it's in the Olympics, it's in the Paralympics.
uh,
Yeah, you can just literally Google it. I think at the most recent Olympics we had, there was a dressage freestyle, which is kind of where they can make up their own routine to do. And it was like this really cool rap song, and like it was so cool to watch. So yes, it is mainstream.
cool? Well, thanks for explaining that. So, you mentioned paying the bills. So, everybody has their own journey, their own lifestyle, their own place in life in terms of what their expenses may be, including location, geography, in the city, in the suburbs, whatever. Um, at one point in your journey, did you or will you be able to pay for your basic living expenses with this platform, these platforms?
So I feel like it ebbs and flows. So there was at one point when I was paying for everything, with these platforms, and it was great. But then I don't know, I just kind of hit a slump. I switched managers, and so it was kind of a weird time. And so like right now I'm not really doing any work with social media. And I do have, a regular 9 to 5 on top of some other stuff. And so I would like to find my way back to influencing, partially because I'm lazy and I don't want to have a job, but also partially because I do really enjoy, creating content and sharing my story, and just getting people with disabilities more normalized. But there's not quite a niche for it yet, although that's coming more frequent. So I forgot the question.
Uh, at what point of are you able or were able to cover your expenses? I guess more so from because like as a layperson, who I'm just getting started on my own social media journey. I'm a late millennial, so I'm 39, and my job is crazy. I work a lot of hours, and now I've got 3-year-old twins. Like, I don't know the first thing about social media, and I think there's a lot of people that do, and probably other people out there that don't. But people will see a follower account, right, and they'll make assumptions of what that means. But then you talk about engagement, and then the engagement will then dictate what type of power you have in your messaging, and then that means well how much will somebody spend on your brand. So again, that's my layman's terminology. So how does all that fit together, and what are the numbers and metrics that are important in the industry?
Yeah, so definitely engagement is a huge one. I find that most of my engagement comes from TikTok just because you can have so many people watch your videos so fast, you know? And I've even had videos that I've done maybe like 2, 3 months ago blow up out of nowhere. And so that gives me a lot of, attention too. And then of course it's all about numbers. But granted, even if you have small numbers but really good engagement, you can still make money and get deals. And it also depends on how active you are, how much you're posting, all these things, how engaging you are with other people. I'll say right now, um, the well, I don't think I can say like what the largest I've been like paid by a company is. It's probably in some contract somewhere. But like I've been in the
Maybe you can say, hey, this is the
five.
average, and this is something that was a percentage higher, something like that. If you can do some quick math.
Yeah, there's no industry standard. That's the problem because I feel like social media marketing, especially TikTok and Instagram, is still so new. And the whole idea of being an influencer is still so new. We have like celebrities from TVs and movies and stuff, but celebrities off of like Instagram and TikTok, that I don't think that really happened until the pandemic. So that's only a few years old. And so also like location where you are. And, obviously if I lived in LA, I think, I would have obviously a lot more success because I would be around that like influencer culture versus being out here in Dallas, which I mean, there are, plenty of Dallas influencers, but it's just about also being connected to the right people. I've been paid, up to 5 figures for some content that I've done. And so, it's great. I'm not complaining. And that's with numbers at, I don't even think my Instagram was where it was today, which I think right now I have like 139,000. I think when I got this deal, I had like maybe 90,000. And then I think I had like 1.4 on TikTok. So there's a lot of factors that go into how much you can make and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't be just made, if you do have smaller numbers. I think it all depends on what your niche is, who you're trying to target, and then, your engagement, because there's always a company that's trying to target what you're targeting, and they'll pay for that.
So you mentioned the management company. Um, what are they focused on? How do they help? What do they do to be able to help your brand? What's their the activities or the things that they're actually doing to help?
So the main thing that they do is they just kind of like keep the schedule of like when you're supposed to be posting stuff. They negotiate the contracts, make sure you're getting paid a fair amount, things like that. So they're just kind of all the back end stuff while you're the front end. So it's nice not to have to worry about, they just kind of like keep you up to date. Like, oh, hey, like next week you have to have your draft ready. You have to post on this day at this time. You need to sign this contract, make sure it looks good to you. And then if there's like any stipulations with the company, like, oh, well, the company wants this and this, is that okay? Things like that. So they just kind of handle all the details of everything while you just focus on creating content and sharing your story.
At what point in the journey did they say, hey, you know what? This is something that we want to do. And is there a metric that they look at in terms of signing somebody on and to be able to spend the resources to help somebody? Like is it a number of followers? Like how does a company like that gauge when is the right time to be able to start working with somebody, an influencer?
Yeah, it really depends on the company. I know some management companies won't work with you unless you're already making like 100,000 off of social media. And then there's obviously a lot of smaller management companies. It just kind of depends on if they think they can help you. And so, I do know some managers that manage like small creators, and that was their niche. That's all they did. Then I know some managers that only manage some mid-size influencers, because they were really good with partnering with companies that were looking for that kind of thing. So it's kind of widespread. You can pretty much find a manager for like any kind of stage that you're at. Um, And then usually you don't like pay them outright. They just take a percentage of like the deals that you do. And so it's kind of nice because then, they don't get paid unless you get paid. And so it's because I feel sometimes that like I have had managers in the past kind of like work and work and I wasn't seeing anything and I was still kind of like paying them outright. And I was like, well, like, what's the point like of me paying you if I'm not getting any work, So these are all learning lessons that I had to learn and that no one told me about because obviously like I don't know a ton of influencers, back then. And so it's just something you unfortunately have to figure out. But I did.
Cool. So you were able to generate income before bringing on a manager. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, a little bit by myself. But then I realized that, hey, I don't like going over contracts. I don't like negotiating. I'm not super great at it. So it was nice to have someone that could speak on my behalf.
Can you walk us through your very, 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 very first one?
Oh man.
And how
So
long ago was that?
maybe like 3, 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
So when I was first starting out, I only did what are called gifting brand deals. So the company would give you something and in return you would make content for them. And then a few times they would like offer money on top of that. And I was like, cool, great. And then I think, man, I can't even remember like my first one, but it was definitely probably for like a few $1,000. And I do believe I had a manager at that point, and so she sent over the contract. I signed it, and then it's just about getting, whatever the company wants you to promote, creating some kind of like fun video, but that's awesome organic to what you do. Because obviously you're not trying to copy someone or even though you're trying to sell something, you're also not trying to sell it. And then it's just about posting it. And then the part I hate is that most companies don't pay you until 30 days after you post. And so it's like you do like 2, 3 weeks of like work, and then you have to wait a whole nother month just to get paid. So that was a little frustrating. Then you would have companies that wouldn't pay you at the 30-day mark, and I'm like, it's in the contract. And then you have to wait like another week or two, and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. So definitely has its ups and downs. And so if you can, have multiple contracts going, you can kind of have that like flow of income.
Is there a situation where they would say, "Hey, we're not going to fulfill this contract because of X, Y, Z"? It's like the content or the performance or whatever didn't fit what they required. Like, is that a risk that you go into?
Um, Not too often because a lot of times they'll ask for a draft video first, so that way they can go in with any corrections they might want or anything they want included, and then you can go back and put those in. And so really you don't post it until both you and the company have agreed that like, yes, this is what I'm going to post. There are some companies that say like, hey, just kind of do whatever you want. We're not going to review it. And so like that's kind of nice. And obviously I would never want to sabotage my relationship with the company or anything like that. And so I would always post good content or content that I felt was good. And I'll say I've never had a problem with a company being like, hey, like your video sucks, we're not paying you. So that's been nice.
Are there some tools or resources or people in your life that, as you were getting started, that pointed you in the right direction?
No. I don't know. Like when I was starting, like no one I knew, like no one in my friend circles do social media, at least for what I do it for. And so it was really just me Googling a lot, like, how do I find this? How do I get this? Da da da. So I guess Google was a great friend.
Okay, so again, today in this environment, there's a ton of stuff on YouTube. I can name off probably 5 names off the top of my head of people. Robert Benjamin is like one of the people that I use a lot. That just makes it very simple, gives you the updates kind of in real time what's going on. But 3 or 4 years ago, a lot of these content creators were not doing that. It wasn't as big of a need or niche. So
And I feel like influencers are huge gatekeepers. It's like they're making all this money and they don't want someone else to come in and take it, which I think is dumb because we're all trying to hit different markets, you know? Like I get like obviously some are hitting the same markets, but I don't know. I just think it's selfish. And if like I can help someone, like I would love to be like, hey, yeah, this is who I use. Hey, yeah, da, da, da. Like, I'm still gonna make money. I'm not worried about myself. You're not gonna steal my job. So I think that was another big thing that I found is that even when I asked for help from other content creators, like I wouldn't get it, you know?
Yeah, that's really, really unfortunate. I'm sure frustrating, because at the end of the day, I mean, you're creating content and that content, when you're putting it out there, I mean, people want that content because it helps them in some way. They connect with them emotionally, et cetera. I mean, it's geared to help somebody at the end of the day. So that's frustrating. So Google was your friend. Any tips or advice that you would give to somebody right now if they were just at the beginning of their journey of trying to build an audience, build their channel, their platform?
I would just say be authentic. I feel like people can just spot a phony from miles away now. I think it was harder, in the start, but and I think sharing your losses and your failures are good. I feel like there's so many Instagram accounts I look at or TikToks or whatever, and they just live these like glamorous lives, and I'm like, this cannot be reality. Like we all struggle with something, and so I think the more real you can be, I think the more people will connect with you. And even if you don't have a large following, you have a genuine following. And I think that counts more.
So what if you're posting and you're posting and you have no followers or engagement and it's just going into dead space?
Okay, Instagram is kind of dying. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, a lot of it could be your hashtags. I try to do kind of like a niche to like what my actual post is about, and then I try to do a broad variety to bring more people in. And so they have all these like silly rules for it, like don't do hashtags that have like more than so many million or blah blah blah, because then you won't get seen. You can also tag people like brands if you're wearing it or places, things like that, that can help with exposure. So there's a lot of like behind the scenes, and a lot of these higher up influencers and social media people, they have social media managers that literally do this for them, so that way you don't have to think about it, because it is a lot to try to think about and do for every single post. But there's just like a lot of little things, and like what time of day you post and blah blah blah, like it's ridiculous is what it is, but it's the game we have to play if we want to be a part of this world or the social media world.
So I want to come back to this a little bit more and kind of just, when you map this out a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, like what do you see this, becoming? What's your goal? Before we go there, you mentioned you have a full-time job. Can you share a little bit about that if you want?
Yeah, so I work for a company called Martin Bionics. It's a prosthetic company, and it's a great company. I'm technically like a customer service ambassador, so I talk with people that are interested in our products. So we make the socket, which is the top part of the prosthetic that you wear. And so I just talk with people that are interested in our product and get them connected with either one of our clinics or clinics around the country that make our products. And so, yeah, it's a great job. I'm actually not going to be there much longer. So I'm hoping to quit by around Christmas time, to just
Do,
kind of,
do they know this?
they do.
Okay. We don't want to be airing your dirty
Right.
laundry.
Yeah, no,
Surprises.
I've been super upfront and open with them, and they've been really great. So I really want to get into more real estate and wholesaling and stuff like that, fixing and flipping more full time. Um, just because I can make more money with that. And I'm kind of tired of the 9 to 5 grind.
Okay. Okay, cool. I mean, part of this channel, it's about the everyday person building wealth. And, my own personal journey has been really focused on real estate. And, I call it the stair step method. You buy a property, live in it for a period of time, save up by the next one. You do that a couple of times. I've given this example of somebody who started with no savings and a 550 credit score and, stair stepped his way up from 150 house, 250, 350, 450. So bought four houses and that's a $1.2 million portfolio that in 30 years will turn into probably over $3 million. And all because this person, knew the formula and executed the formula.
Yeah.
And so obviously it's easier said than done. There's a lot of risks that are involved with owning real estate and rentals and all that stuff. So this channel is about the everyday person getting ahead, using the power of compounding for you as opposed to against you. So you mentioned fix and flips real estate stuff. When and then coming back to the Instagram stuff and TikTok stuff, when you fast forward the clock 2, 4, 5 years, and you have all these things working for you and compounding, you're going to be able to see a massive amount of success. So let's start with the social media stuff. So if you fast forward the clock 5 years, I'm putting you on the spot here. 5 years down the road, what do you think is possible with your branding, with your profile?
Oh, man. I think in 5 years, I would love to be doing like speaker events, like motivational speaking, maybe even a TED talk. I feel like I could really go into that world, and just inspire people. I I feel like I do it enough in Target when random people come up to me. I feel like I can do it on stage. So I would really love to be doing that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Mm.
Cool. So I'm a numbers guy. So when I say, hey, you know what, like my goal is X number of followers by X amount of time, that's how my mind works. But do you even care? Is that even a goal of yours? You just
No, and honestly, it wasn't even really a goal when I started it. And then when I did hit like, all these crazy numbers, I was like, whoa, like these people are following me. It's kind of surreal to think that like that many people like know so much about me and then at the same time don't know me at all. And so I think when it comes to numbers 5 years down the road, even if I'm exactly where I am right now today, I would still be okay. Like I think it would suck a little bit like wow, like 5 years and like no one else wants to follow me, but I think people are just forgetting that like social media isn't all what it's cracked up to be. And there's so much more to life than just, how many numbers do I have on an app that could literally be taken away from me tomorrow.
that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, like that's on Twitter, with switch over, you don't pay your $8, you're not going to get your check mark if you're verified. It's a
Man.
whole different story. Um, the real estate stuff, right? I mean, these markets are kind of in chaos, changing very quickly with prices and rates and values and all this stuff. Um, but when I look at this stuff, from a chart perspective, and I'm gonna just segue for just like 2 minutes here. We had a major recession in 08, 09, the Great Recession, and home values crashed. And because it's very much recent in the last 12, 13 years or so, there are headlines out there about housing prices crashing. And what's interesting about that is I see a headline that says housing prices crashing, like just like 08 or something, some reference to 08. And then at the bottom of the article, it's like, well, this city in this state, home values went up by 0.2%. It's like, but they still went up. What are you talking about? So no one knows what the heck's going to happen with the markets, but when you look at the recessions in the last 40, 50 years, most of the housing value indexes will remain pretty steady throughout recession. So that's what typically happens. So maybe prices go down, but the data doesn't really reflect there's going to be a crash. So with that being said, I'm not here to make predictions, but real estate is something that I'm engaging in currently and looking for opportunities, looking for deals, and there's deals out there to get. And you mentioned fixed and flips, which is just one way to be able to generate income in real estate. So, do you want to share a little bit about your background of where you are in your journey when it comes to real estate?
Yeah, I'm just at the beginning. So I actually got my real estate license last year. But I was working a 9 to 5, so it's kind of hard to have a real estate career when you're behind a desk all day. And I tried to do it on the weekends. I joined a brokerage. I feel like the brokerage I joined didn't really help me all that much. And I think I was expecting for like the brokerage to be like, hey, like here's a lead, here's, like more of that kind of stuff. And it wasn't that at all. It was like talk to people in your circle. And I was like, well, people in my circle are in their 20s. They're all roommates with each other. Like no one's looking to buy a house quite at the age that all my friends are at. So it was really, and obviously I can't like pester them buy a house right now. So it's kind of been very slow. So I did end up leaving the brokerage. And so I still have my license, but it's not with anyone right now. And so when it comes to, the wholesaling side, or the fix and flip, that's just something that I do, more personally. I'm not even the one doing the deals. I work with an investor. So he's the one, trying to find the deals and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, basically we do a lot of foreclosures. So we go to auctions and buy houses that are being foreclosed on, things like that. And so um yeah, I feel like I'm just getting started. So I am in the real estate world. I'm really not, just because I haven't had the time to invest into it. But I am excited for like what that holds. But the little bit that I have been in it, with the fix and flips and then some rentals, but a lot of people are not looking for rentals right now. But the main problem that we're just having is because homes were so overpriced like last year and even the beginning of this year, sellers will not sell at all. And so it's like you offer them this price and they're like, no, that's like too low. And you've like done all your comps, you've done all your research, and you're like, and your house is like falling apart, and like you're not gonna get 600,000 for it. So I think that's gonna be the hardest part with this market slowing down, is just the sellers wrapping their mind around the fact that their house is not gonna sell for what it would have sold of last year, which like that's what they're all thinking, like, oh, the market was so up. And so I think that's gonna be a big slap in the face for all of them. And it sucks, but it's just kind of where we are. We all knew the market was going to slow down at some point. It could not have kept going and going like it was with all those influx of Californians coming to come to Texas. So it's nice to see a cool off, because that means that now we can really start buying some property, and then once it cools off even more, we can do more. But sellers are really going to have to wrap their minds around the fact that their house is just not worth what they think it is.
Yeah, and that's a conversation that I've had with a number of people that I know that have put their houses on the market, and talking to other realtors in different parts of the country, in DC and Florida and Missouri and Illinois, et cetera. It's like people that have their house on the market, a huge majority have rates at 3% or 3.2 or 2.75. And it's like, hey, they can afford their payment. And so if they don't get the price that they want, then they're just going to take it off the market.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the reason that where I'm seeing this just gridlock. There's just, like you're saying, like people just aren't coming down, and there's just no negotiations, and just things are just sitting. But today is 11/10, so November 10th, and I'm not sure when this will actually air. So, but this morning the inflation index came out, and it came out lower than what was predicted. I think the last reading was 8.2, and this was predicted to be 7.9. It came in at 7.7. So inflation is coming down faster than I think what was expected. So we saw a pretty major jump in stocks today, and then the bond yields came down, which is a driver for helping interest rates come down a little bit too. So that's interesting. Again, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, the next day.
Right.
But that's a whole other conversation about this whole CPI and the Federal Reserve and the predictions, and it's just very, very frustrating. Because last year at this time they were talking about, well, inflation is transitory. It's transitory. And then you fast forward the clock 5 months after you hit an all-time high in November, December, then oh, it's not transitory. It's major. It's major. It's coming. It's going to keep growing
They
up, and
can't
then
make up their mind.
yeah, and then it rises, and now it's falling, and it just happens to be falling right before the election. I'm not here for conspiracy theories, but then there's also legislation out there about federal Fed officials and politicians, not being able to trade in the markets. And so did we just have the dip before the rip before the elections, and now that things are going to rip? I mean, I don't know. It's just very frustrating from that perspective because the headlines and the media, it's just very hard to sift to what's actual factual. So I'll leave it at that. Um, so do you want to dig in? You mentioned a foreclosure, mentioned a flip. Do you want to dig in? Because again, some listeners that are hearing this don't know anything about your market. Do you want to talk about an example or a hypothetical example of something that you've seen in your market in terms of price point, what was done, what was not done, area, rentals? Like, do you have an example?
Man,
I'm putting you on the spot. I'm putting you on the
I
spot. So you don't have to.
know.
If you don't have one, that's okay. We'll cut it out. We can just edit it out. No big deal.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I have an example. We're going I have a coworker of mine did go to an auction last month, so she got to see it. I didn't go to the auction because I had work. But I'll be going to an auction in December, so I'll actually get to see how it works. And then you can get foreclosure lists off of whatever county government website you're looking in. So like, for Texas, there's like Kaufman County, Collin County, Dallas County, all the counties, and they have the foreclosure, like the list of homes on foreclosure. And so, what I do is I take that list and I skip trace the owners and I call them. I'm like, hey, I see that you're on a foreclosure list. Are you thinking about selling your home? And so this is another way to do it because you can get the house for, obviously a lot cheaper. It's off the market. B, you help that seller not get foreclosed on. Because I mean, if you get foreclosed on, that like ruins your credit, right? Pretty
Yeah,
much
yeah,
ruins
for
your
7 years.
yeah, ruins your chances of buying another home, all that kind of stuff. So you're really doing them a favor. You do have to deal with a lot of unanswered phone calls, people, not wanting to do business, or people being like, well, my house isn't getting foreclosed on, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, it's about to get auctioned off, so I don't know what to tell you. So,
I see it on the public website.
right, yeah. So a lot of that kind of stuff. But it's a good way to get deals that are, off the market and going to be a lot cheaper. And then we also worked with some leads that were like motivated sellers. A lot of them were not motivated sellers and they wanted way too much for their houses. And I had one guy, he had a really nice home in Dallas and he had updated it. But the way he updated it, it still looked 20 years old. Like he got a new kitchen, but like it still looked old. And I was like talking with him while I was like looking at his house. I was like, yeah, we're definitely gonna have to like update some things. And he was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, he's like, I just updated the kitchen and blah blah blah, but the kitchen looks 20 years old. And so I'm like, how do I tell this guy that this just isn't what people are looking for anymore. This isn't, we're in 2022. People want white cabinets and grays and neutrals, and your house is just not that. So we're still gonna have to pay to re-update everything. And so he was not happy with the price that I gave him, needless to say. So you have to deal with a lot of that too. People just being in denial about where their house is at and things like that. So it's interesting, but I'm excited to get into the foreclosure stuff just because yeah, it's I don't know, I'm excited, and the fix and flips, and I'm not a big like fix and flipper. I did have an ex who was a custom home builder, and he did flip a house, so it was fun to see the process. However, the problem with that is that the time it takes when he bought the house to flip it, the market was doing really, really well. Like it was great. But then, when you flip, like there's so many complications that could happen, and like all this stuff. And so by the time he flipped it, it was 3, 4 months later, and the market was not what it was when he bought it. And so he still made a profit off of it, but he couldn't put it on the market for what they had originally thought. And that was super disappointing. But that's just something that you take the risk, it's a risk that you deal with when you do flip. And then I've worked with a few rentals, but a lot of people are not holding property that I've seen, like investors that I've talked with. A lot of them are just fix and flips, which I find really interesting. And I'll say a lot of the problem that I've seen with rentals is just the equity in the house isn't there. And so well, there's no point. And so I understand it, but also I've seen the risk of fix and flips firsthand. And so I'm like, and especially with how crazy our market is right now, like, I mean, it could crash tomorrow, like, and then what? You're stuck with this house.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of risk, but I'm ready to dive elbow deep into it once I have some time.
Cool, cool. Yeah, excuse me. Cut that out. Jesus Christ. I mean, and that's the thing is that everybody's got their own journey. Everyone has their own place that they want to get into and start. And there's no right or wrong reason. My forte had been real estate. I have my own journey. Some people are gonna spend their time doing stocks or trading or crypto, which oh man, crypto. Ooh, the FTX exchange falling apart, and now the buyout from Binance is not going through. I have to be honest. I've never made a crypto trade in my entire life.
I
I've
haven't either.
I've never been able to figure out how to open an account. And that's just me being an idiot, just being honest. But thankfully, it's worked out because I haven't lost any money out there. Maybe lost some money in other things like such as stock trading, but that's a different story. Um, Everyone's got their own forte, right? But the thing about it is, like, this channel, as I was kind of explaining to you before we started recording, is that at the end of the day, the old adage, well, if I knew what I knew when I was 22, et cetera. But I didn't understand time. I didn't understand, like, okay, if I buy a property today and then I fast forward the clock 10 years, like, yeah, I'm sure it'll be up in value and you've got a house in equity. But like, I didn't understand the power of compounding, working on the values going up, the mortgage balances going down. And if you at some point in time you turn into a rental and someone else is paying down your mortgage, and we're talking about like massive amounts. So I give this example all the time. If you've got $10,000 that you want to be able to decide what to do with, and so let's say that you put it in the stock market and you make 10% on your money, and the other option is you put $10,000 and you buy a property, and let's say that that property appreciates by 3% in the first year. So that $10,000 or 10% in the first year, which that'd be a great return in the first year. That's $1,000. And so I didn't warn you about any math, so I'm not going to ask you these questions and
Okay.
put you on the spot. I wouldn't do that to you. That'd be very mean. Now, if I put $10,000 down on a house price of 300,000, so that's your 3% down conventional loan, for example, for a first-time home buyer. So now you have a house, and let's say after 1 year it appreciates by 3%. So when I ask this question to somebody, well, what's the return on the house? I get a lot of different answers because it's not always straightforward, but like 3% on not 10,000, but 300,000, you purchase the entire asset that's appreciating. And if it's a rental, then you're getting the rental income on the entire asset, even though you don't own it free and clear. So that's one of the reasons why real estate can be very powerful. So that's $9,000 of appreciation. So it's the same $10,000 into the equation for each of these scenarios, but then the real estate's 9,000 appreciation versus the 1,000. That's a 9-to-1 difference. And
Wow.
then when you fast forward the clock, and let's say you acquire 1, 2, 3, 4, and will you with your real estate license or other people in the real estate world, you know, there's what's called cost segregation if you're a real estate professional. And I bring this up because I had Jeff Badu, who's a tax professional in Chicago, Illinois, on literally yesterday. And I'm not sure when that will air. Maybe it'll air tomorrow, hopefully. But he literally gave this example of, hey, I'm an entrepreneur and what am I working towards? And he just happened to be giving an example of somebody that he'd already done the math on this scenario where, hey, they're a real estate agent and he worked with somebody and he was able to set up their income instead of a Schedule C, they turned it into an S corp, and that cut on their tax savings. And then They bought a property. It was a multifamily. They lived in it as a primary residence, lived in one of the units and put 3.5% down FHA. And then because they're a tax professional or a real estate professional, they were able to do accelerated depreciation.
Oh,
So then that meant that they were able to wipe out their $100,000 of income in terms of no tax liability at all. So that's helped them save more money. And then they bought the next property and then so on and so forth. And all of this story, I was like, well, what does this project to be? He's like, well, we just talked about the scenario where they bought a 10-unit apartment complex however many years later. Well, if they stay focused, there's no reason they can't get to $1 billion. I'm like, did you just say billion with the B? He's like, well, yeah. If they stay focused and they keep going and they keep learning and growing, okay, well, that's part of the hard part, right? I mean, you hit a level, and sometimes it's hard to stay on the gas. It's hard to keep growing, and you have all these other distractions and things that happen. But the reason I said that is that real estate is powerful, and when you have time on your side and you get in, and you may not have all the answers, but if you just get in the game, you get
yeah.
an opportunity to be able to learn. So I love the passion, um, of wanting to get into the game. You got to start somewhere.
Gotta start
So
somewhere. Yeah.
yeah, and you mentioned, kind of okay, a lot of your other friends, talking about the real estate license. A lot of your other friends just, hey, there's not able to buy right now, and that's kind of your natural circle. So it's hard to be able to make a living as an agent, especially if you're part time in that world. And if you don't have the experience, how do you build the experience? Because your network is at a certain level. So it's a very, very uphill battle, I
Yeah.
would think. And that's the same thing in my business. How do you build a network and mortgage and get clients if you don't have it? You got to start somewhere and grind it out. And it's not right for everybody. Um, but I'm kind of segueing back into that early 20s, mid 20s. From I'm 39, right? So the way that I think about things is very much different than how I thought at 25. But in your circles, I mean, what are people talking about in terms of real estate? What's the relationship or thought process? Is it even a thought process for people in their mid 20s, late 20s, early 20s?
I don't even think it's a process. Everyone I know is renting right now. And so, there might be, some people that are, saving up for a house. I know some people that still live with their parents. So we're all just at different levels. And I know some people that are about to get engaged. So I'm like, well, y'all are gonna need a freaking house. Because you
Hmm.
can't, and or they're just gonna rent somewhere temporarily, And so there's definitely some, um, I would say a few money savvy people, but I think in my circle, people are just focused on work. A lot of them are still finishing up college, or they're just now going. I have a friend who's going to dental school, so they're all just kind of finishing up their careers. And so I don't think buying a home is on their radar until the next maybe 3, 5 years, until they've established themselves more, and that's okay. I don't think I'm ready to buy a home, anytime soon either. And that's just the people that I know and that are in my circle because I'm in my 20s. And I feel like I don't want to say real estate is unattainable, but for the retail buyer, real estate, especially with interest rates going at what they are, they're getting more and more unattainable, and renting is becoming the thing, And I feel like this world is going to turn into a renter's world. I mean, that's why they're building all these sky rises and all these big apartment, units. And that's the problem, is that it's going to get to a point where no one owns anything. You just rent everything. And it's like, no, I want to say that I'm the owner of this, I'm the owner of that. And so, I definitely do want to buy some properties myself that I can rent out. So that way I can benefit from what the world is already starting to go towards.
Yeah, I mean, on point. I mean, I think the data 10 years ago, I think the average first time, the age of a first time home buyer, I think is like 27. I think now it's in the 30, 33, 34. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly with inflation, it's hard to be able to get ahead and save. And I mean, that's really kind of what this channel is all about. Like literally we're chronicling people that are doing things on the side, building businesses on the side, try to be able to get ahead, to be able to someday maybe turn their side hustle into a full-time job and control their own destiny, kind of a thing. So again, not right for everybody, but if somebody does have that desire to want to try to do something outside the box and put the energy into something, there are ways, unbelievable ways where people are generating extra income. So any other advice that you would give to somebody? Because one of the things I didn't get a chance to dig into, you mentioned posting every single day, right? Like building a habit, doing something every single day that doesn't really necessarily fit into your normal schedule, your normal things that you are comfortable doing. Like, was that a struggle? Was that easy for you to be able to just, I'm gonna do this every single day and not stop? Like,
Mm. It was weird at first just because like if you know me, like I don't say a lot. Like I say what needs to be said and then I'm pretty quiet. I'm an introvert. Like I don't know. And so trying to find something to say when I was posting all the time, I was just like, what do I even like? It's a picture of my face. Here you go. And it's like, it feels weird, you know? And so now I definitely do not post every day. And I feel like I don't need to. I feel like before I was like, oh my God, I need to, I need to, I need to, I need to. And so now I'm just kind of content that like I post when I want to post. And if I have like a story to share, like, hey, this cool thing happened or something like that, then I can share it. I don't feel the need for endless posting of selfies and all that kind of stuff. Like I don't think people benefit from that, you know? And I want people that come onto my page to benefit from what I'm sharing. And so I'm trying to focus more on that versus post all the time.
yeah, I love that. And one of the things you mentioned earlier was at some point in time in your journey, you maybe want to get into public speaking and help somebody, help that other person. What do you think, some of the struggles that people, the everyday person is going through that you'd like to be able to help out with? Is that something you identified yet where you may be able to somehow help? Because everyone's got their own struggles, anxieties, everyone's going through something in some way.
Yeah.
Um,
I
have you, go ahead.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, I think the big thing is I just think people want someone that they can relate to, you know? And in today's world with like influencers and blah blah blah, everyone's lives just look so perfect and so unattainable. And I want to be relatable, you know? I'm still a human being. I still do all these human being things. Like my house isn't clean all the time. I get sick. I don't feel good sometimes emotionally, and it's okay if I cry. And I feel like no one cries anymore. I'm like, you just got to know it. It's okay to feel your feelings, to not clean your house if you don't feel like it. Like, obviously, don't like get crazy, but I just want to be relatable. And I think when it comes to like being a speaker, I had to learn a lot of stuff on my own because I'm the only disabled person in my family. And so like no one had any answers for me on, you know, building friendships, on gaining confidence, on how to do things as simple as ride a bike, you know? I had to learn all that on my own and I learned a lot of lessons along the way. And so I would hope that I could be relatable to people and that, you know, yes, I have a disability and maybe, yes, I do have a lot of followers, but at the end of the day, I'm a person just like you. Like I'm nothing special. I'm just an ordinary gal living in this world just like you, trying to do this whole dating thing and it sucks. I can't cook to save my life and just all this stuff. So when it comes to speaking, I would just want to be relatable.
Okay. Tough question for you. So if someone called you up and said, "Hey, guess what, Alyssa? I got a job for you. I need you to come and speak in front of this auditorium of you picked the audience. Would you be
Uh,
ready? Would you be ready today? If they threw you
yes,
out there tomorrow, would you be ready?"
I could do it. 100%. I would be
Oh,
ready.
okay. If there's a listener out there that has an audience
In Dallas,
and
Texas, or anywhere I'll travel.
Florida, Tennessee, just DC, Texas, Dallas, Texas, if you got an audience that needs some motivation and some inspiration, I mean, call.
Hit me
Let's
up.
okay, okay, okay. And again, listeners, where can they find you at?
Alyssa the amputee.
Okay, okay. So I asked that question, would you be ready tomorrow? Because at the end of the day, you spend so much time worrying about, like, me personally, this channel took me 5 years to even like come to a reality. This has been on my brain for a number of years. And I kept doubting myself, is this even worth it? Which it may not be worth it. I have no idea, but I'm still going to, at this point, I'm like, I'm going to do it. And it's my job to go find the people that need help in some kind of way. But I spent years doubting myself and questioning myself. Is this even worth it? Do I even have something special or worthwhile to share? But at the end of the day, I mean, sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. And, that question, you're like, hell yeah, I'll be ready. So that means you've already been spending time and you've got this thing mapped out. So I love that. I love that. And just let the adrenaline and the juices kick in and make it happen.
Yes, the amount of fake speeches I give when I'm in the shower or like, getting ready for the day, like pretending I'm accepting an Oscar, like I got this down.
All right. All right. I love it. Okay. So at some point in time down the road, um, when you get in front of that big crowd again, we'll have to have you back on and talk about it and talk about God knows whatever we want to talk about. Yeah, I know you've got a lot of things going on. You got a lot of big goals. So you obviously, not going to stop until you get them. So I know we're running short on time. So is there any other piece of advice that you want to give somebody that's 23, 26, 27, 33, that's trying to get to a goal? Any piece of advice?
Oh man. You do not have to have it all figured out. I feel like I think that's what we kill ourselves with. The like, oh, I have this goal and I'm at this point. I should have it all figured out by now. And I know that I've done that a ton to myself. And the answer is you do not have to have it all figured out right now. The pieces will come to you when they need to come to you. I feel like you can't put yourself ahead of some place that you're not ready to be at. And that's okay if you're not there. And I think being able to accept that, I feel like I felt in times in my life that I'm so far behind where other people are. And I'm like, I get down on myself and I'm like, listen, like, it's okay. You're on your own journey, your own path, and you do not have to have it figured out all right now. Like, it will come to you when the time is right. And so I think if you just trust that and believe in that and just kind of, you know, take every opportunity as it comes, then you're going to get where you want to be.
Love it. Love it. Love it. I think that's all we have for time today, but no, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some insights and sharing your journey and all this stuff. Alyssa Cleland in Dallas, Texas. Dallas or Fort Worth? Dallas.
Dallas.
Dallas. Anyway, but thank you so much and looking forward to having you on again down the road. Take care.
You.
Bye.